Okay, seeing that it is not the will of the board to produce an August 31st option, we will not ask the committee to go back and produce another option. So we will leave it with these 4 options for us to vote on next week, if that's good for the board. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to present tonight.
All right, next up on the agenda is item 8.03, approval and adoption of our capital improvements plan for FY21 to 26.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Michael, our Chief Operating Officer, who I'm pretty sure is going to turn it over quickly to Mr. Padilla, our Director of Facilities, who's prepared tonight a CIP. Ms. Michael.
So thank you so much. I'm very happy to introduce Sebi Padilla tonight, who's going to present our CIP. I'd really like to thank Sebi for all the work that goes into developing the CIP and managing all of our ongoing construction projects. We have been very fortunate to have the investments in our school buildings at Mount Daniel and currently at George Mason, and I know that that's a heavy workload lift in addition to doing the CIP and all your other work. So thank you.
Hello, I am Sebi Padilla, Director of Facilities, and going to present the proposed 2021 to 2026 capital improvements program. Are you running? How's this running? Okay. How's it flipping? Are you doing it?
He's got the summary chart.
Oh, that's all. Okay, I got it. Do you want to just put that on the screen? Okay, so I'll just use this. I was going to go through, I'm going to go through my slides that are on your board docs, I believe, but this will be the final one we can go through. So to qualify for a CIP project, it needs to meet a $150,000 threshold. So you'll see some of our projects don't meet that. So the way we're getting there is working with the city's general government to kind of wrap them into a facilities reinvestment fund. So some years it might be larger than 150,000, some years it might be smaller. And then that is separated from a large project, say, I'll just skip ahead like to the TJ, potentially the TJ addition and renovation, which is would be a bond-funded project versus some of the facilities reinvestment could be operating funds or PAYGO or bond or a combination of all 3. So I'm just going to start with Jesse Thackeray. The only project we have this year would be the lobby waterproofing, which is we for $15,000 to $25,000, and we would want to complete that this summer, which would be fiscal year 2021. We did have a project last year on there that was completed or is almost complete, which would be the dehumidification system. So that was funded this past year through our operating budget. Moving ahead to Thomas Jefferson, which is the only, I guess, really large project on here. It is kind of outside of the current 6-year plans, sort of. We're looking at it to start in fiscal year 2026, but we're putting it on here so that the city can have the appropriate time to plan for that. A few years ago, when we had this on here, we had a much larger number and a much larger addition because that was based on the enrollment growth we were seeing at the time. The current enrollment growth is much less, kind of flattened out. The last page of my document actually has, I think, Ms. Michael's document that a presentation she did a week or 2 ago for all of you on the enrollment numbers. But what TJ would provide would just be to renovate the pre-2012 building. We did get an HVAC renovation a couple of years ago, but the building still needs new electrical and plumbing and restroom renovations, kitchen renovations, enlarge the lobby and the main office and make the main entrance ADA accessible. We are well below the enrollment capacity right now. We're sitting at 551 versus the 750 student capacity, which excludes the modular trailers. So that's looking at about 10 to 12,000 square foot addition, which would be no classrooms. It would just be all of the other things kind of around it. And that's $3 to $3.5 million starting in around 2026. The next project is Mary Ellen Henderson Middle School. Most of the projects on here, minus one, kind of tie into the opening of the new high school. First being the flooring replacement. Since there will be a tie-in in the cafeteria and kitchen of the new high school connects to the middle school. We're going to have to replace that flooring, some of it anyway. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and replace all of the first floor flooring this next fiscal year and spread out the rest of the floors over the next 2 to 3 years. It's about $100,000 a floor. We would do similar flooring, what we're doing in the new high school, which is an LVT, which is no wax. So zero maintenance for us, no waxing during the summer, which would save us a lot of time and money as we are moving, especially when we're kind of changing our summer schedules around. The next one that does tie into the new high school opening is the addition and reconfiguration of the security vestibule at the main entrance. If you're familiar, when you go in right now, there's a stairwell in that little that security lobby. So the students, when they change classes, are potentially commingling with visitors that are coming in and out of the buildings. The idea would be to kind of push the security vestibule and the security desk out in front of that, so the students don't really mix. And that way, we can kind of better match what we're building for the new high school. And then that would also be this next fiscal year to coincide with the opening of the new high school. The final one is as an outlier project of 2027, which would be to replace the roof, and that'll put us on the replacement cycle of where it needs to be. The next two projects are new this year. So the first one is a system-wide bus parking. With the new high school, we took away all of the current bus parking for the new parking lot and part of the new high school project. So if you have driven past like Don Byer Volvo, you might have seen about half of our fleet parked at the city's property yard off of Gordon Road. Right now, we can only accommodate about half of the fleet over there without doing a major overhaul of the entire property yard, which is just not a city project we can do right now. So half of the fleet it's parked at George Mason. When we move into the new high school, all that'll have to go away because that'll be where the developer has to start demoing the old high school and getting prepared for the parking lot, the trapezoid area of the new project. So we need to find a home for the new buses. We're actively sort of looking around town where we can maybe lease space or for about half of the fleet. Wherever we go, we know we're going to have to do electric for the engine block heaters, fencing, potentially paving that lot or wherever it may be. So we're estimating it to be about $100,000 to $200,000, but that'll have to be done before we move into that new high school because there's just nowhere else to park the buses. The final one, which is also new, is just kind of a refresh of the stadium complex, like concession stand, restroom complex. That building, if you've been out there lately, it was built in the mid-90s. It is going to be right next door to the new high school, not going to quite match. So the idea would be to sort of freshen up the facade so it sort of blends more into the new high school design. Additionally, to modernize the current restrooms, and on the opposite side, which we used to store golf carts and things like that, to add additional restrooms on that other side, because then that'll be sort of the new Mustang Husky Way kind of main grand entrance into the athletic complex. With all the new fields, everything will kind of have a nice, good ease of access to this building versus what we have previously had, and we're going to need the extra restrooms for some of that. And then that's estimated to be about $100,000 to $150,000, and we would try to tie that into 2021 to 2022 when the fields are completing. And that's all I had. Now, the last slide is just sort of a summary of everything we kind of talked about. We have sent this over to the Assistant City Manager, who will combine it into the joint city capital program and present it to the Planning Commission, I believe, maybe in a week or two. Is that right? Yeah. And that's all.
Thank you, Safi. Nothing from Dr. Noonan, and I'll open up to the board if you have any questions or comments about the CIP. Yes.
So, Sevi, thank you very much. I just want to confirm that I'm tracking from last year to this year, and you were saying really well about what's new. So I just want to make sure I was following along. The lobby waterproofing at JTP was on last year's plan as well, and it's a carry forward into this new plan. But it was because it was scheduled even then for a little ways down the road. Am I right on that?
We were hoping to complete it this past year, but it's all dependent on if funding's available. When you put it in the capital program, if it doesn't get approved or there's no operating funds to fund it, then we just have to carry it forward to the next year.
Okay. And the improvements at Henderson, that whole chunk was last year, was waiting, of course, for the new high school to go forward on some of it, that ties in a little bit, right? So I'm just making sure I'm tracking.
Correct, yeah, we did, we brought it forward last year, knowing that we would need to do it to tie into the new opening of the new high school.
Okay. And then the final thing I guess I have is on the bus parking. I look around at the map and I'm wondering where you're gonna find enough space for something like that, especially since it needs to be done in a relatively short period of time. I don't know where I should be looking on this one, but are you guys feeling comfortable with
Well,
this?
I will start with, thank you for identifying that, Mr. Padilla, as a need. Thank you for identifying it as a risk. And it is something that we've been looking very closely at for quite some time. Ms. Michael and I have been in conversations with Mr. Padilla about some very specific sites. And Ms. Michael, I don't know if you want to address those or leave it sort of open since we're still looking, but there are a few spots.
I think one of the things that's really important for us to consider as we're thinking of this space is we certainly appreciate any support we can get from our general government in terms of locating these buses. We know that at the property yard, they have a lot of competing interests for that space, but we are certainly grateful for any support that they could provide us there or at any other site. Some of the biggest challenges we find in terms of bus parking is how we turn them around. Right, we often forget, or we think about, oh, there's space that looks like we could accommodate the buses there, but we need to be able to not only park them, but be able to pull in and pull out. And then the other thing that I think we often forget about as we're looking to find bus parking is the times of the day that we need to park our buses, right? So people often say, why don't you just park your buses at your school sites? Right? They look at it and they go, you have a huge parking lot at Mount Daniel, for example. Why can't you park the buses there? Well, when you look at buses, we use them in the morning, we run all of our routes, and then we need to have them parked midday. So they spend a chunk of the day parked, and that's when we have people at school, all of our teachers and visitors coming to school. Then we use them again in the afternoon and we park them overnight. So really the considerations as we're looking for places to park the buses are our ability to get them safely in and out of the site. We would really like to remain inside the city of Falls Church, right? That's very important to us. We need them to be secure, so we need to be able to add cameras. And then as Sevi indicated, we also need power. We use engine block heaters on them, so we need to make sure that we can install electric. So we're really trying to think not only about the immediate need for next year, but also a long-term solution. Having buses in multiple places is hard. It's hard for us in terms of if we have an issue or if we need to jumpstart them or other components. So we're really trying to be strategic and come up with a solution that works best overall.
Do you also need parking for the bus drivers for their cars?
So transportation has been a real trooper in all of this. We've moved their office multiple times between our sites, and this school year, what they have to do every day is they have to pull their car up adjacent to their bus. They have to start their bus, pull their bus out, and put their car in the space that their bus was in. So they have been, truly partners in trying to resolve this situation as we've worked through this development site. So ultimately, they could put their cars where their buses are. And we also do have some fleet vehicles which we can park in parking spaces at Mason. So you'll also sometimes see our buses or our cars there, whether they're cars used to transport students or else maintenance vehicles.
This is a puzzle, but I'm confident that we're going to be able to solve it. I think we've got Mr. Padilla and Ms. Michael on the case and are working really hard. But I can't reiterate enough sort of the comment about any partnership opportunities that we have with our general government friends would be really helpful.
Other questions from the board? Mr. Castillo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of questions. The athletic field at GMHS, we're good for how much longer on that turf field?
Life expectancy
Like
is roughly 10
7 or 8
years.
years, right?
7 to 10 years, depending on if you maintain it. We maintain it. We have it cleaned and brushed twice a year. I think the last one was about, 3 years ago? So we've got about 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
And we've already been in discussions with our counterparts over at the rec center about looking forward to that next replacement. We're just not have early conversations.
Okay, and then with respect to TJ,